Super. Time to get started, everybody. Looks good from my side. GM, everyone. How's everybody doing? Welcome to today's Twitter space on how to build a thriving developer community. I'm Shelly, aka Max, and I'm your host from Neon EVM. Super cool to see people joining us. Lovely to see you all here. Uh, I do see a raised hand from the Arbitrum account. Hey, Yamad. Cool. Let's get things right going away. So, our topic today is how to build a thriving developer community. Devs definitely have been the backbone of Web3 for the longest time, and they've been fueling innovation. So it's time to take a good deep dive into the secrets of how to build and nurture these ecosystems, what really works, what doesn't, and how can we shape a future where developers feel truly empowered to build those winning blockchain products that everyone's waiting for. So we've got today a very amazing lineup of speakers who are going to bring you some good insights. Up top with me is Matt Hamilton is Senior DevRel at Arbitrum. So lovely to have you here, Matt. For those of you who already know or don't, Arbitrum is an L2 scaling solution on the Ethereum ecosystem. With us is Kajemne. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Apologies if not, and would love to hear from you later on that. Kajemne is Chief DevRel at Chainbase. Chainbase is revolutionizing data infrastructure, so we'd love to catch up on that. Also joining us is Daria, who's the DevRel at Neon EVM. Neon EVM is the pioneer network extension on the Solana ecosystem and helping EVM builders to deploy their dApps on the Solana environment. Daria, I for one know, is joining us straight from DevCon in Thailand. So she's sitting in the heart of the dev community today at the hackathons and workshops as we speak. So lovely to know that. Time to get started, I think. It's a good Friday. It's markets looking lovely. There's a lot of excitement this week in Thailand from ETH Global, from the DevCon stages. So it's time to take a deep dive. It does say on my screen, looks like connection is weak. So I'm just confirming if you all can hear me.
Yes, you cut out for about half a second to a second there, but we did hear,
I think.
or at least I heard.
Lovely. Good to have you back. Also with us here today is our head of community at Neon EVM, Ivan Hypnogaba, and big thanks to him for organizing this and getting everyone together here from Arbitrum to Neon to Chainbase and to give us this lovely time to interact. So let's kick things off right away. Grab your snacks, your beer, coffee, whatever time zone you are on, and let's get our amazing speakers to spill the tea on how they're building thriving dev communities. So I'm going to start off with some intros first. And Matt, over to you for that. Would love to hear about you a little bit, about the Arbitrum community.
Yeah,
And
sure.
Matt, do you
I'm
hear me?
also, yes, I do. So yeah, I'm also joining from Thailand, from DevCon, and from
Okay.
ETH Global Hackathon.
I cannot hear Matt,
Um,
so we'll love a confirmation here. Looks like some error.
I can hear him. I can hear him clearly.
Lovely.
uh, yeah, so I'm here at DevCon and ETH Global. So yeah, I've been involved well for only about half a year now with the Arbitrum community. But before then, I was heavily involved with the Filecoin community and Protocol Labs for about 2 years, and before then, Ripple and specifically the XRP community. And then previously worked in sort of the Web2 area at IBM doing DevRel for AI and machine learning, and then ran a web development agency for about 15 years before then. Worked for a startup for a bit, doing health and fitness, like a mobile app. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell, and great to be joining you.
Awesome.
Thanks, Matt, and thank you so much. Sorry, I got disconnected very briefly, but lovely to hear that. Moving over to you, Kajemne, and we'd love to hear about a little bit about you and also about chain-based community.
Awesome. So just for clarity, my name is pronounced Kajemne Karimu. Many people on the team call me KK for short. They find it a lot easier. I'm okay and open to that if that works for you. But I definitely respond to Kajemne, Karimu, or any combination of my name as long as it's respectful. That said, I'm the chief DevRel at Chainbase. Chainbase is really exciting. It's an omni-chain data network. Right now, we're building something called Manuscripts, which is really a protocol framework toolkit that's designed to simplify data access and processing methods. So basically, developers and users can more easily interact with the large amount of data sets that are available on the Chainbase network. My history as a DevRel began with Skynet. I was a big part of the SIA community. I actually was a miner and everything. Tried my hand at mining for a while. Did a couple other things, and then moved on to Skynet, which was like a decentralized content delivery network. Very exciting concept. It was it did a lot of the functions of if you could imagine like IPFS combined with like Arweave or storage. It's kind of, that's probably a poor explanation, but gives some sense to those who are unfamiliar with Skynet. I was the DevRel there alongside Daniel Helm. And then I joined Lava shortly after Skynet and was ahead of most of the technical documentation there. So from Lava, I've moved on to Chainbase, and I've been at Chainbase for, I want to say, under 6 months. So I'm fairly new on the team, but I'm already really falling in love and enjoying my time.
Amazing, amazing. Great, KK. Lovely to hear that. Daria, over to you. We'd love to hear from you and also about the Neon community and also what's happening at the DevCon dev side.
Yeah, can you all hear me?
Yes, yes, we can, Daria.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, so I'm Daria and I'm a DevRel at Neon EVM. So I started, I think, relatively like not so far ago with DevRel compared to Kajemne and Matt for sure. I started as a DevRel at SQD, which is an indexing solution, kind of like Chainbase in a way. Obviously works in a different way, but and now I'm a DevRel at Neon, and we are trying to give EVM builders access to Solana users and Solana liquidity. So we're working on getting devs to work with our new Solana native approach. And yeah, I'm at DevCon right now too, and we have bounties on hackathon. And actually, we met today with Matt at the ETH Global hackathon. There was so many hackers. It's great to see. Definitely very exciting here at DevCon.
Awesome, awesome. So this is good. We now know Matt is there as well. So I'm going to throw in the first question over to you, Matt, in that case, and it's to do with hackathons and builders' nights. So pretty much what you all are doing there. So Matt, how do hackathons and builder nights actually create an impact on developer engagement and learning? We do know that they do, as a matter of fact, which is why they're seen as a very popular way of engaging. But at this point and what you're seeing currently, how are these hackathons and builder nights important for dev learning and engagement?
Okay, so yeah, as said, I'm here at the ETH Global Hackathon. I've participated in a number of hackathons as a judge, and also as a hacker previously, working these hackathons. And there's a number of aspects of hackathons I think that are very important for developers. There's an aspect of one, just purely awareness, right? Finding out about all the different projects. There's so many new projects in this space. Just literally wandering around a hall with so many of the vendors there and the sponsors and the projects. There's a bunch there that, I've never even heard of, and I'm fairly active in the space, but I would say probably half the projects at ETH Global, I probably, I don't know much about, right? And a good deal of them I'd never even heard of until today, right? So there's an awareness aspect of it. There's also very much an educational aspect, a chance for developers to really get like hands-on with your tech and have one-to-one like FaceTime in the case of these physical hackathons or virtually in the case of online hackathons. Really some one-to-one time with your like core developers. So today we had one of our like core developers of one of the bits that we're working on, a thing called Stylus that lets you write smart contracts in Rust. And he was here, Chris, and he did a workshop. But he's like right there at the desk. So when developers have a question, they can come up and ask him and really get that very rapid feedback. And then the other bit is just encouraging developers to build things. They come up with ideas. I'm always amazed at just the sheer breadth of ideas and projects we see. I mean, they really are, you know, amazing. There was a hackathon. I was just at the Edge City Lana event in Chiang Mai, just north of Bangkok, and at the hackathon that was there. And there was a project. A woman had created a project of, you know, I mean, around a very, very serious topic, but around reporting sexual abuse. And the project used zero knowledge proofs to keep everything confidential, but still allow patterns to be established. So if there was a number of reports and there was a common theme within those reports, the patterns could be discovered and the information could be revealed as necessary to take action. And that is, I mean, it's obviously a very, very serious topic, a very real topic that faces a lot of people, especially a lot of women, and using technology to really help that, right? And she came along. I gave her some help at the start with getting things going. I didn't see her for like 6 days, and I didn't think that anything had happened with what she was doing. I didn't even know the project she was working on. And she comes back 6 days later with, "This is what I built," and I was just blown away by that. And that is a project and a use case of like zero knowledge proofs I never would have even thought about, right? So it's great to just get all of these people with all their different backgrounds, different nationalities. I can't remember how many are here at ETH Global, but I think it's something like about 85 different countries represented here at ETH Global. And so you get such a diversity of developers and users all working together. That's fantastic.
That's lovely and amazing to hear, especially the social and inclusion aspects. Beautiful. I think you rightly point out the bandwidth of what all gets showcased at the stage is amazing to see. KK, going over to you, the same question actually. But would you like to add something more to how this really fosters perhaps innovation in spaces that you've seen on different hackathons? And what do you think is the future here for hackathons and builder nights?
I recently returned from ETH Global San Francisco and was really blown away by some of the same realizations that I think Matt pointed out as exposure was a big part of it. Just seeing there was a number of Web 2 devs and what would be people considered from the traditional tech world who wandered into the hackathon. And just as he described, they walked up to various booths, they engaged in conversations, and by the end of the night, they were Web3 aficionados, devs, and definitely fans of the future of the tech. So that was, for me, very much proof of hackathon. I actually called it that. I created a video that was like Hacker Diaries, where you can see on my X, where I just interviewed some of the people, and they were very excited about the bounties. They were very excited about being recognized, and they were very excited about being exposed to new tech. So I think in general, that is one of the biggest benefits. And one of the things that we can't overlook about this is just that we may be familiar with the space, but creating a dedicated environment where someone can walk in off the street and be deep dived into the tech and be rewarded for their exploration and discovery is a very powerful tool. I think that going forward within the space, we're going to see hackathons that think more about the longevity of projects. The advantage of the hackathon is that it generates excitement. It's good introductory tool to the space, to the technologies, to the team members, even of devs to each other. But one critique or criticism that hackathons and builder nights and various events like this have had is that some of the projects that they create and the initiatives that grow out of them can be short-lived. You know, if you have developers building towards a bounty or testing a specific technology, they may be building that with the success of that weekend or those few days in mind. So going forward, I think there's a big consideration about how does a hackathon feed into the bigger things that you have planned in your ecosystem? And the question becomes, really, does it matter whether you do a hackathon, a builder night, or whatever? Or is it more about the surrounding accoutrements or ecosystem or support that comes before and after that, that causes a developer to be actually uptake into that ecosystem and become a vital part of its fabric?
Lovely, amazing, absolutely. Everybody do go and check out those Hacker Diaries because it sounds very exciting on KK's Twitter page. He says so. I'm going to do that after the spaces, but yeah, totally. The support that ecosystems give before and after really does matter. Not those 3 days at the builder night or hackathon. Definitely. Daria, moving over to you. Building on what KK is saying, how can an organization actually decide which type of hackathon or which type of event is best suited to the dev community's needs, or what is it? What is that deciding factor per which you decide that a hackathon needs to be set?
I think it definitely depends on the goals. So I would say that, like, I definitely agree with Matt that it's an amazing opportunity to get exposure. Like, we had so many people come up to our booth, and it was definitely one of the best ways to introduce people to our project quality-wise, because you get to talk to each one and you really get to like see other people, kind of the team behind the project. But I think also what a lot of projects, I guess, miss out on is getting developer feedback, be it builder night or hackathon. And I feel like that's a great way to actually get feedback from developers and kind of funnel it also to product, so that they can optimize your protocol or project, especially if it's dev oriented towards the actual user base. And I think it depends. Builder nights are obviously more of a relaxed format since they don't have this kind of rush of competing and completing it like 48 hours, 72 hours, whatever. But hackathons at the same time get, I guess, in a way, get accomplished more. So I think it just depends on the current goals. But yeah, I just think that it's a great way to get feedback from builders. I think we need to do that more.
Super, does sound amazing. Feedback does matter everywhere. And just very curious, in the bigger view of things, how often is it that projects seek feedback, or you've seen that projects actually do seek feedbacks? And this is open for anybody who wants to pick this up. But is that a reality, or is it something that we need to aim for and is missing in the industry? How does that look?
I'd like to speak to that for a moment.
Definitely, please.
I think some of that process is automated when you have actual builders like very frustratedly, furiously trying to use your tech. I think one of the understated things is just like when you have people who are forced into trying to build viable use cases on a very short period of time, some of the holes in your documentation become very obvious. Some of the holes in your tutorials become very obvious. And some of the ways in which your tech glitches under pressure become very obvious. So I think some of the feedback process is kind of inherent in the fact that you have a concentrated group of users who you're close to and can solicit information from, who are like frustrated and building.
And I can definitely point out an example of that today. In our quick start for Arbitrum Stylus, the first thing it does is talk you through installing Rust. And it says in there that, we support a particular version of Rust and below. And since that quick start has been written, a new version of Rust has come out. And if you follow the instructions that you go through, you now get a version of Rust that is one version beyond what the code currently supports, right? And that is something that has just sort of changed. And most of the developers and people working on this have installed Rust and have the correct version. They haven't started from a completely blank slate and reinstalled, like not having any of the tooling for a long time. And I spun up a completely blank Docker image with a view to, okay, let me just like go through everything, and found that out today. And that's something I probably wouldn't have caught. And when you've got developers like right there giving you that feedback that something doesn't work or is not obvious, that is the most powerful thing. I mean, you're very I don't know if this is quite the word, but sort of vulnerable as a DevRel in these places that you get this direct feedback. You can't hide from it, right? A developer walks up to you with their laptop and says, "Hey, I've typed this line of code in from your instructions and it does not work. What do I do? And right there and then you've got to fix that. Or get somebody, on Slack or whatever, from your organization and say, hey, look, urgent, we need to get this fixed. We're blocking developers on this. And that's like a very much a forcing function, to, pushing things through. So I think it's, there's a lot of value in that.
Totally agree. Feedback definitely is a two-way loop there, and it works beautifully. Also brings a lot of transparency. So that's interesting. Feedback both ways is working well. But moving to docs, since we're talking about documentations and frameworks here, I think we all probably agree that documentation is critical. It's very important to maintain absolutely flawless documentation if you're looking to attract people and have them flawlessly build on your or be able to access your systems. But what kind of documentation frameworks or tools have you found to be most effective? Also, on that note, everybody, please, you're free to go and check the docs for all three projects and leave a feedback. The DevRels are right here, and they did say it's a feedback loop. So feel free to go and check out what you'd like to build on. But Daria, moving to you. What documentation framework or tools have you found to be very effective when working with docs?
So I learned a lot. Actually, it's kind of funny because I think before I started as a DevRel, I guess used to think that I'm stupider than I'm actually is, because sometimes I would look at the docs and be like, okay, I have no idea how to use this thing. And now I realize that it wasn't me who was stupid, at least like not every case of that when that occurred, but it's actually the documentation was bad and I had no idea. And so I think that's why it's super important to keep the docs like good for developers. And I learned to do most of the documentation when I joined SQD. That they had like a technical writer who was very, very qualified with a PhD. So I learned a lot from him. And then actually Fabian from DevRel, who he used to be a DevRel in Stake and Rewards, introduced me to a way to organize information depending on the goal in each of the documents. So it's kind of a bottom-up framework and flow of work where you go into each document and see is it more of a how-to, is it more of a tutorial, is it more of the knowledge base kind of information or explanation, and structure it in the corresponding way. And that really made me look at the documentation differently and maybe made me understand what makes a good documentation. And I think I really improved since discovering diataxis. I think I improved a lot in writing documentation for developers. So I would just, say that diataxis was great.
Sounds good. A bottom-up approach. Matt, would you agree, or you want to add something to frameworks and tooling for documentations?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to borrow there's a maxim in photography, or at least used to be. Maybe things have changed now with mobile phones and stuff. But the maxim was, the best camera is the camera you have on you, right? And it's like, as a photographer, you can get like bogged down in which is the best camera, this lens or that lens or this body or that body, and it's the one you've got on you to take the photo, right? And with documentation, I kind of feel a little bit the same. There's definitely tools that can make things a bit easier or, organize things, but the best documentation is the documentation that, you're actually keeping up to date and working on. And so, yeah, I want to check out. I'll come and find you, Daria, tomorrow to check out the tool you were talking about, because that sounds really interesting. But really, it's just get in there and get it updated. If you look at the Arbitrum docs, there's a button right there, request an update, and it takes you straight through to GitHub, and anybody can submit like an update to the documentation like right there. And I think that's one of the most important things, regardless of what tool you're using. Just make it really easy for developers to be able to update documentation, request updates, submit updates, comments, etc. As quickly as possible, so you could like roll those into the documentation and keep it updated.
Sounds good. Yes, lovely. KK, are there any tools in particular you would like to recommend to our users? Because there are a lot of builders just starting out their projects, maybe, and they want to get their docs into action and want them to look as beautiful as probably Arbitrum, Chainbase, or Neons. And what would you tell them probably for setting up visual graphics, for setting up certain accessibility, navigation, etc.? Is there any tips that you have for them?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a new builder of documentation, I would definitely look for a documentation framework that uses something common like Markdown. Um, if they have a proprietary language or something like that that it's using, just realize that you may not be able to migrate it as easily later. So things like Docusaurus, Mentlify, these are some of the tools that I've used before, primarily attractive to me because once again, they use common languages that are easily understood by anyone who's worked on that level of documentation before. So I agree. I think Matt's wisdom was very on point. It's really about just getting in there and getting it together. But also just consider that if you're starting docs from scratch, don't get too esoteric. Don't make it where I have to read docs to work on your docs or learn about, make it where the docs are as plug and play as possible. And there are many tools that do that. Like I said, Docusaurus is great. Mentlify is great. And there's several others that are not coming to my mind right now that are also great tools for that.
Lovely, lovely. I think that would be useful for all our listeners here.
Can I say one other thing there? I'm sorry.
Yeah, definitely. Go on, please.
Something else came to mind. It's just that we're talking about documentation frameworks and we're talking about the tool. But I do want to emphasize that just as important is the documentation community. And I think Matt spoke to it when he said making it as easy as possible for people to fix errors and things in the docs, because one of the overwhelming or unfortunate things that can happen if you're like a solo DevRel or you have a very small DevRel tech writing team is you can know that there are all sorts of holes in your docs and just not have the time to fix it. So having an actual community that maintains your docs and is like passionate about plugging holes, fixing, submitting PRs, pointing out issues can be way more crucial than the selection of whatever tool or framework that you do.
Yeah, definitely. Community matters, collaboration matters, knowledge sharing is quite interesting. So for small teams, definitely that would be a good takeaway. On that same note, KK, I'm going to move a bit towards what you just mentioned, more collaboration, more knowledge sharing among devs. While from what I've seen, there is massive amount of knowledge sharing and collaboration in Web3 compared to traditional industries. Maybe it's more passion driven, maybe it's because the decentralized ecosystem, but definitely I see it to be better and much more than earlier traditional industries in tech. But what initiatives can be taken to further promote collaboration within the developer community, within ecosystems and across ecosystems, cross chain as well? Daria, over to you.
I think, yeah, I definitely agree that there is a better collaboration culture, because I think that stems from more people being aware that it's not necessarily like a zero-sum game, that it can be a positive-sum game. So I think all it takes is just convincing more people of that, and you can do it in many, many different ways, like maybe setting up cross-project collaboration. Maybe again, I've ran like organizing events that are not focused on shilling, but rather focused on innovation, on technology itself, on collaboration. I think there are a lot of great examples of that in the ecosystem, but obviously it's always good to get to have more. So yeah, I would just say it's all about the positive sum game, essentially.
Okay, super, super. Matt, you've been in the space for long, and do you feel similar? Is the collaboration, to your opinion, really good, and how do we make it probably even better?
I think it is very good. A lot of that comes from the intrinsic nature of Web3, that so much of it is open source. It is on a blockchain. A lot of it is very visible. A lot of it is collaborative. The development is collaborative. The teams are typically global teams. So there's a lot there intrinsically about Web3 development that lends itself more to collaborative development and that culture of collaborative development rather than your traditional industry of, a number of people in one physical location in an office working on something fairly proprietary or closed source, perhaps. So I think that the nature of Web3, the global community, the fact that I can sort of assemble a team, like I said, at ETH Global, there's 85 countries, I think it is, represented there. There's nearly 2,000 hackers sat there in that room today. It's amazing getting them all together. But in terms of kind of what we do with this collaborative, ecosystem and to help inspire that, I mean, KK mentioned as well his developer diaries. I've done a similar thing as well. I wander around with a GoPro on a selfie stick. I grab a developer. You've got 2 minutes to tell me what you're doing. Really informal. We'll just do this to camera. There's no marketing gloss to it. There's no editing to it. I just get them and I'm just like, here, I'm at this event. I'm talking to whoever it is. Tell me about what you like or what you don't like about building on, in this case, Arbitrum. And that's a fantastic way to get like honest feedback. It gets them a chance to kind of talk about their project, and it shows them that you care, right? And there's a lot. I was at a DevRel panel discussion last night, and 2 words that kept coming up were empathy and honesty. And within the DevRel community, there's a lot about empathy, and it's about empathizing with the developer. And I think if you can really show them that what they're doing matters, and I kind of say to people, it's like, as a hackathon judge, right? This might be the 53rd medical records on the blockchain project that I have judged today, right? And to me, this might be like a repetitive thing. Anybody that's judged hackathons in blockchain will probably know what I'm talking about. But to that developer, this might be their first entry into Web3, right? This might be their first encounter with your product, with the community. Here at ETH Global, I can't remember the number this year. I think it's about 23% of everybody there. This is their first hackathon event, their first Web3 event they've been to. So it's really about encouraging them. It may seem mundane to you, but to them, they've sat down and started with something and really, really got with it. So I think that thing about sharing the success stories, and something like these sub communities really help that. Like we had a party the other night, Arbitrum and Azuki. Azuki is an anime-based NFT project in the Arbitrum ecosystem, and they're working on Anime Chain, which is a blockchain specifically about it. And that whole community has its own ethos, its own artwork, its own heroes, its own lore. And just having that community as a sub community, people feel a real feeling of belonging within that community, right? And so you see many of these little communities evolve within the Web3 industry, and I think that helps this collaborative nature, because there's a feeling very much of belonging part of the community, regardless of which community it is within the ecosystem.
Totally love that, Matt. Absolutely beautiful. Empathy unites. Yes. Trust unites. Honesty unites. And in Web3, lore definitely unites. Big Azuki fan there, so I understand. And I think that's probably one sub community or lore or the passion that the community holds together is definitely a very big uniting factor. Moving over to you, KK, what's your opinion in terms of collaboration, and probably how do forums or sub-communities or maybe mentorship programs help in this regard, not just at hackathons, but probably throughout the year?
Yeah, this is awesome question, awesome area to discuss. I think one of the most, I've seen pretty much all of the things work. I've seen mentorship programs work. I've seen developer programs work, champions programs work, forums work. I think the main distinction or the main thing to pay attention to is the point at which your community begins helping each other. Because there's only so much that you can extend out as a DevRel, as the source of this, the voice of the company or the source of the community. You can only do so much as a DevRel or a DevRel team. But when you start to recognize the people who are doing DevRel-like work within your community and give them some sort of platform recognition, voice, and I think I want to go back to something it's along the lines of what Matt said. I think that a lot of what we can do, or what encourages collaboration and knowledge sharing, is not always like the bounties or the flashy things. Sometimes it's just connecting people. Like, hey, you two are working on something similar. Let me make this introduction. Or simply recognizing people. One of the beauties of Web3 is that the technical people working on the projects and protocols oftentimes interact directly with the community. And that's something very unique about our industry, where someone is, if someone's using a Twitter API or Facebook API, they pretty much are never going to come into contact with the engineer who's developing the API. They may talk to customer support or something like that, but oftentimes within Web3, a community member can have a very intimate experience with the team. And so I would just say it's important to both not overlook those things, but also, if you're a DevRel, to encourage your internal team to be aware of their impact when simple things like responding to a question directly, as opposed to just having a DevRel do it, and trying to build this idea that everyone is making this voice, everyone's connected in this way, because that's really what empowers, I think, builders to take it to another level. When they feel like they're just like there with the crew, ready to build, and any of their questions can be answered by anybody and different people's ideas can be heard, typically you don't have to do much beyond setting that playing field, and then people take off from there. You'd be surprised what people do when they feel that.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
I'd love to just jump in with like two little stories about that, picking up what KK said. I used to do Twitch live streaming, live coding, and I'd be on there. I set like an hour each week in which I'd go on a live stream, and I would code away on some project. And we had a live chat in there. And at one particular point, I used to get like about 30 people in the chat, which is quite a lot if you've ever done like live coding. Like normally it's like one or two people would be hanging around there, but I had about 30 people in there. And at one point, somebody asked a question about the code. And before I could answer it, so they're typing this question, before I could verbally respond, somebody else in the chat replied in text back to that first person and helped them out before I could respond. And that was like just this watershed moment, as KK says, when the community starts to help each other. And that is a fantastic thing. And that's a great tool if you can encourage that, because as a DevRel, most DevRels typically have got like way more things to do than they can physically do, right? So if you can work ways of scaling your DevRel efforts by enabling other people to help each other, then that is a fantastic thing. And there was the second part was there was a DevRel that I can't remember who it was now, and I really wish I could remember who it was to attribute this this comment to. But they described DevRel as incentivizing developers without the use of money, right? Now, money obviously plays a part in it. We do bounties and that kind of thing. But again, the little things, right? What can you do to help somebody? And as KK said, make an introduction. We had a fantastic thing here at, we had an event, Arbiverse, here at DevCon. And somebody who I used to work with in a previous ecosystem, a previous community, contacted me and said, "Hey, Matt, I'm trying to do this thing. Can you just like, can I come and sound out my idea?" And I said, "Sure, come along to Arbiverse. I'll get you in. You can come and we can have a chat about it." And it turned out that there was somebody else I'd spoken to earlier that day that was doing something similar. And I said, "Hey, look, you sit down with them." He described it to me. I said, "Hey, look, let me make this introduction." And so he was sat down with this, and it was actually, there was a meetup of a community that needed the tool that he was trying to build, right? So he had a room full of about 30 people who were his potential customer. I mean, this was I couldn't have even like planned this, right? This was complete and utter fluke, but it was about like capitalizing on these little random encounters. And I was like, "Hey, look, John, I'm going to introduce you to these people. This is what they do. They would probably be a perfect." And so he sat down and he got probably way more out of that than we could ever have like planned for him to get out of. And that was just a fantastic thing that just happened this week, which was amazing.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, KK. Ma, it's been Web3 is truly for the people. I think so, right? When you point out that I've been trying to reach Instagram because my account is stuck and I'm logged out of my own account, but I'm not even getting to speak to the customer executive. And anywhere in Web3, you can reach straight to the DevRel, you can reach to the support team, integrations, CTO, you will have everybody speaking to you. And here I'm not able to get in touch with customer support from my very own account, but that's how it looks at the moment. So very interesting. Collaboration does make a huge difference. And if anybody wants to point out some very interesting or good forums to be present on, where please feel free to do so. If you want to name any good forums that devs should maybe join, be part of, and would really be helpful to them, do drop that in. Okay, no problem. I'm going to move ahead. We've had quite a few discussion on collaboration, on knowledge sharing, documents, hackathons. So I think a little bit more towards the growth side. And I do want to pick up on some metrics because projects are looking definitely, to grow. And what are these sort of metrics that need to be tracked, whether it is for your hackathons, builders, and how do you actually decide that this initiative we did as a project was effective for the devs or it reached the devs correctly? What's that success criteria? KK, over to you.
Oh man, this is a difficult one. Um, there's a lot of pushback about data-driven DevRel, rightfully so, especially because I'm not always certain that projects are clear on the outcomes that they want. I mean, they may say something like, we want to get more devs, but what does that mean, like qualitatively, like, or quantitatively? Like when you say more devs, you mean like people to use your product once and never use it again? Because you could have 1,000 signups and not gain any builders in the space, and vice versa. You could have one person who deeply uses and becomes a champion or an advocate for you, who ends up onboarding the next 1,000 people. So there's a very asymmetric, unconventional way in which I think key metrics and indicators have to be approached that combines the qualitative and the quantitative so that you can tell a complete story. I haven't mastered this. I'm not even going to pretend like I have the answer for exactly how to measure what the best outcomes are. But I think that it's a combination of being able to show growth, whether that over a longer term than just the immediate impact of something, whether that's just like counting the number of developers who become a part of the community, meaning they actively participate in your Discord or your community calls or whatever net you have that people fall into, because it may be a forum or something. And also the qualitative aspect of showing how your project enabled a specific use case that is going to be enduringly used. I feel like those are very good ways to approach it, and ones that I've used in the past. I think like with something like Chainbase, it's especially difficult because what we deal with is data infrastructure. So when you have people who use your API, is that they're building on your product, but there's not always the marriage of the project to the community. They may just use your API and not join your community in any way. And so you have to consider all of like this full 360 picture of what specifically are you looking for when you say developer growth. Is it the use of your product in a very distant way? Is it the joining of your community and becoming an advocate? Is it building something enduring, or is it just touching the tech? Because all four of those can be measured various ways. I hope that gives some sort of indication, but I feel like this is one of those very difficult questions about DevRel.
I think indeed, definitely, it does shed some light. Difficult question for everyone, growth team especially. Yeah, but Matt, over to you. Any other indicators or metrics? I think KK gave us quite a few, but any other that you'd love to add to these?
Oh, I totally agree with KK. This is hard, right? And there's a meetup, the developer avocados meetup, that happens at a lot of these events. There's one particular DevRel guy called Billy from a project called API3 who's very vocal in this, and uh, you know, paraphrasing him, I think he may stay this a little bit stronger. Basically, data is crap, right? And it is really difficult, right? It's such a fuzzy area. And also when you add in things like Goodhart's law, if anybody's familiar with Goodhart's law, which is when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to become a good measure, right? And you could come up with a target, and you end up then chasing that target, and it's very difficult. So an example here at ETH Global with Arbitrum, like typically, so like I said, there's about 2,000 hackers here. And Arbitrum is a layer 2 EVM network. People can deploy Solidity contracts to it. If we had sort of our typical usual bounties, we would be expecting probably 150 to 200 submissions at this event. And that's 150 to 200 projects that come Sunday morning. Myself and the other Arbitrum team have to try and judge, right? And that takes a long time physically for us to go through all these projects and judge. In contrast, that this year we're focusing exclusively, or this hackathon we're focusing exclusively on stylus, and we're saying you have to write your smart contracts in Rust. Now that is dramatically reducing the number of developers that are going to get involved in this and submit their project to us. So rather than 200, I'm probably expecting 20. Now, so if I reported these numbers up kind of blindly and up to the organization, they go, wait a minute, we had 200 last time, we got 20 this time. Does that mean we're 10 times worse? Well, depending on how you look at it, we're focusing on a different aspect, and we're deliberately narrowing down our scope to get people to focus very narrowly on one particular technology that we're promoting out of a range of technologies, one particular technology for this hackathon. And we're doing that because we really want to find out, does this one particular technology gain traction in the market? And we want to get feedback on it, right? Again, go back to the idea of, what are we doing these things for? In this particular case, we really want to get people, developers, to kick the tires of this, check it out, give us our feedback, let us know what works, what doesn't work. So we've really narrowed it down. But that means the metrics, well, they're going to be meaningless if compared to other hackathons and doing other things. So yeah, I agree with KK. Really, really difficult to try and measure these things. And with DevRel, it's about relationships and about building community. And there's a number of times, and probably the others will have similar stories to this. You meet a developer, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I saw this talk that you did online 3 years ago, and hey, look, I'm here now, and I've built this thing." Right? There's no way you could ever track that back to that random person that saw that random talk that you did at that random university on the other side of the globe 3 years ago, and they're now a part of your community. It's just impossible. But that's kind of the way these things go.
Beautiful. Yes, I think difficult one definitely to measure. I think going back, qualitative and quantitative are a unique balance here that needs to be kind of maintained. And this is definitely a bit in Web3, definitely unique to each project in terms of what you're building, and the metrics and goals will definitely vary accordingly. But I'm going to move to one metric which has been very popular in traditional technology, and coming to DevRel again, very, very popular, which you mentioned, Matt, was developer relations and long-term sustainability, so that whoever's building builds with you for the long term and isn't it for and in Web3 what we're seeing is very short cycles, which gets very difficult to sustain, and then growth spurts happen and then growth gets constricted. Is that something you've seen, or would you agree that is how it varies? The long-term metric is missing here, or is yet to come into the Web3 cycle for dev relations? Yeah.
Who's that too?
Anyone who wants to add to it, if at all. Yeah. KK, Matt, Daria.
I've got some comments on this, but I've spoken a lot, so I'll pass the mic on to Daria or some of the others.
To hear one, but over to you, Daria.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'm super interested to hear what Matt thinks as well. But I would say that I agree with Kajemne and Matt that it is a little harder, I guess, to measure DevRel than other more like formulated, like better formulated jobs. But I personally think that like KPI doesn't really work for DevRel. It's more about, I guess, OKR would be better. And there are some things that you can measure, like, and speaking about some like more long-term metrics, I think you can measure like relationships with developer. Obviously, it is going to be in spurts, and it is going to correspond with the like cycles of growth, and then again the kind of less, I guess, intensive growth times. But I think you can still measure it over time. You can measure engagement level, and then you can still measure developer satisfaction, which doesn't really depend on whether it's a bull run or not. You can still measure like your connection to developers and like how you do the outreach. I think some metrics can be really turned into more of a, I guess, long-term statistic.
Super, super nice. Yes. KK, is there something you want to add to that? And then we'll move to Matt.
No, I think there's wisdom in what she's saying. I mean, Daria's right. There's certain things that you can track. I think what I just want to emphasize that the true I think the true measure of success with the DevRel though always goes back to the relationships and the feeling, because there's a way to create a story that you have a very successful DevRel program that is not the same as having a very successful DevRel program. And things like the flow or process by which you recognize a contribution are so important, because what I've seen in time and working in different projects, and I have to applaud Chainbase in that the team is very good about honoring the developer, very developer first company, is that people view developers in their ecosystem as something like a commodity, like let's get more developers and let's have the developers engage, and let's have as many developers as possible, and let's have as many apps as possible. But having a pipeline for the contributions and having a clear path for a developer to follow, similar to how people gamify the retail experience of crypto. I think that the evolution about sustaining long-term engagement needs to go in that direction with DevRel. It's like, okay, from the getting started to the attending the community call, or interacting with people in the Discord, what is the next step that a developer takes to be a sustained member of your community? Are they supposed to apply for grants? Are there other contribution opportunities? Is there a champions program which captures their interest and helps sustain their project being built? Do they get specific mentoring times from the team once they've built something? But the ongoing support piece is like it has to be thought of more from a humane or a very relationship aspect, where it's like, all right, you all went from dating to marriage. You all went from courtship to dating. Each step of that developer journey is like more intimacy, more things applied to it. You have to spend more time with that developer. You have to make sure that their needs are met. And it sounds funny putting it that way, but I think that the most successful I've been in DevRel is when I've really looked at it, not necessarily from the metrics aspect, but more so from like, how do I build this relationship so that this person feels empowered, feels like they have everything they need, feels like they've been seen, they're getting the recognition, all those different considerations.
Awesome, awesome. I'm going to keep that in mind also for relationship advice, I think. But very nice. Works for all relations, right? Lovely. Matt, I think we're all, still curious to hear. You wanted to add
Yeah.
something in? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what's funny was I was literally just before this call, before I left, I've gone back to the hotel room now. From ETH Global, the hackers are all still going there. But literally just before I left the venue to come here, I was chatting to a DevRel from Ape Chain, a guy called Robbie. Ape Chain is one of the Arbitrum Orbit chains, and he had this idea. Now, most hackathons, maybe people don't realize this, but in most hackathons, what is prioritized is building something new, right? So typically, you can't submit something you've built before the hackathon time. So with ETH Global, you've got 36 hours to build something. You can only submit what you've built in that 36 hours, right? Now, that's great, but what happens quite often is he had a great term for it, which is GitHub dust, right? What happens is people create a GitHub repository, they create a project, they submit it. At the end of the hackathon, maybe they win a bounty, maybe they don't win a bounty. That repository is not touched again, right? They create something and they wander away from it, and it's not anything long term because there's no like incentive for that project to continue long term. Now, that may be intentional, and you have to recognize that as well. Like some people are coming to a hackathon, they're like, I want to found a project, I want to go on, I want to build this into business, I want to take over the world. There are other people that are like, hey, I'm coming for something fun to do for 36 hours. I'm going to meet some friends. We're going to code some cool stuff, and then we're going to go away. Some people are like, I'm focused on the bounty. I want to win that money. That money pays for my next airfare to the next hackathon, and I'm just going to keep going, right? So there's different incentives for different people. But Robbie had this great thought about having a series of hackathons in which you actually incentivize, you turn it completely around and uh, reward building on a project you've had from a previous hackathon, right? So say we have a series of 4 hackathons, they're once per quarter. You have one, and then the next one you get some reward points for building on top of a previous project. And my analogy was, it's okay, maybe it's a bit like, a Formula One race. You have the winners of that race, but you also have like the series points that build up, and at the end of the series you have the overall series winner, right? And we'd still have to work out exactly the mechanics of how this is worked, but I thought was a really good idea about actually turning it around. And instead of saying, okay, we're just looking at what you build within this 36 hours, we're saying, okay, you can build upon a previous project, and we want to see how this thing evolves over time, and try to incentivize people to build longer term. So that's I'm going to chat with him tomorrow, and try and hash this out further. But this is something that I think would be really interesting to try and see how that goes.
Uber cool. That is what I really meant about long-term sustainability. And I think that makes to have that series and cycle where you see the build upon the build and how it grows with time. Beautiful. Absolutely. I also think it's time that we need to start wrapping up. And I usually do this interesting alpha round in the end every time there's in spaces, and I'd love to do that here as well. So from you all, I want you to share one alpha for devs who are building, who are continuously striving, and who are working crazy hard to make things happen and build their winning product. What is that one alpha you want to share with them which you feel would be helpful? So let's start with you, Daria.
I think, I guess one of the important things when you build something, I would say, like, don't be afraid to fail. Because speaking from my own experience, it's a great way to learn. So I would say, like, fail fast, and then you can recover every time. And every time you recover, you get a little better and more confident at what you do. So I think, yeah, that would be just don't take failure as a sign that you should stop. Take it as a sign that you will restart and be better than when you started.
Thanks, lovely. KK, over to you.
Daria hit it on the head. I was literally going to say, be unafraid, be very unafraid. I think that your tendency towards managing your frustration is like a big part of being successful in technology. Things never work as described and rarely work as intended. So the more you can just like learn to wade through frustration to get to your eventual goal and not take it personally when things break, or as Daria pointed out earlier in the call, like you might think like, man, I'm really not getting this like these docs aren't making sense to me. The issue might be the docs, or man, this tool is really not working. The issue might be the tool. So the ability to just stay the course and keep iterating and keep your head down and keep reporting issues and keep working with the team is really like what separates someone who ends up being very successful from someone who maybe struggles and doesn't make it as far.
Lovely, totally nice. Matt, one last alpha coming from you.
Yeah, what I'm going to say is actually related to the two previous points as well. Or I'm going to relate it to it actually, and that is, focus on the user, right? Definitely focus on the user. Now, relating it to what Daria and KK said in terms of failing fast and not being afraid, build the simplest, like, usable thing you can to get it in front of the users as quickly as you can to validate your idea, so that you can fail fast, so that you can validate whether or not this works, right? People may have seen there's a long-term, like, diagram that's been around since ages in computer science and, like, product design, and the diagram depicts, like, a successful, like, evolution of a product, right? The unsuccessful version is you're building a car and you start with two wheels, then you have two wheels and a body, then you have two wheels and a body and an engine, right? Now, until you get to that final point, you don't have a usable product. Whereas the more successful version of that is you start with a skateboard, then you have a bicycle, then you have a motorbike, then you have a car, right? And it's evolving so that at each stage in the project, you have something usable that a user can use and test out, right? So you can get that feedback as soon as possible, so you can fail as soon as possible. If you find out that actually this idea I had is just not going to work, right? Users just don't have this need, or it's not going to work this way, or whatever that might be. Try and validate that as quickly as possible. Get it to market as soon as possible. There's another adage, if it's perfect, you're too late, right, to market. Get your thing out there as quickly as you can, even sort of unfinished, right? Just get it in there, get it tested, and then iterate and build upon that as you go along.
Thanks, Matt. That definitely is helpful. And I think with that, we close our discussion. It's been amazing. I think I always say time is a big teller. We overshot our time here because the discussion was beautiful, engaging, and we could still go on. But in a sense of time, we will close the discussion now. There's been some very interesting discussions, and thanks to everybody who stayed here and supported this conversation. Huge thanks to you all, Matt, KK, Daria, for sharing your expertise. Big thanks to you, Hypnogaba, for organizing this. Thanks, Arbitrum and Neon Handles, for joining us as well. A lovely, beautiful, and most of all, our beautiful dev audience who's here, and all those who will listen to this recording will be available on the Neon Handle. Please do share your thoughts. Let's keep the conversation going. Let's keep showing support to all the incredible dev communities out there and build those winning products. Thanks, everyone. Have a lovely day ahead. Good weekend to you all. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks all. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Lovely to have you here.